If your hip hurts specifically when you walk, it's usually not because you walk too much. And it's not just because your muscles are tight. A lot of the times, walking starts hurting because your pelvis cannot stay stable when you're standing on one leg. And since walking is basically one single leg stance after another, every step keeps putting abnormal stress through the hip joint. So the problem is not walking itself. The problem is what is happening in your body when you walk. And this is where a lot of women get confused because they think things like, if walking is supposed to be good for me, why does it make me worse? Here is what no one is really explaining. Walking does not hurt because you are walking too much. Walking hurts because your pelvis cannot stay stable on one leg. And every single step is creating force your hip joint just can't handle well, or the muscles around it. So in this video, I'm going to show you what is actually happening in your hip when walking starts to hurt, a specific stability problem that drives this issue, and how to test whether this is your issue at all, so you can stop guessing and start fixing the right thing. My name is Marit. I'm a physical therapist and I specialize in chronic hip pain. And I've worked with hundreds of active women whose pain shows up specifically when they try to walk. And over again, what I see is this. Walking is not the problem. What is happening during walking is the problem. So I'm gonna walk you through the 5 biggest reasons walking creates hip pain, and a simple assessment that helps you figure out if this is your specific issue. Here is the reason number 1. Walking is a single leg stability task. So one of the biggest things people do not realize is that walking is not just put one foot in front of the other. Walking is actually a series of single leg stands. Every step you take, you are spending time on one leg, which means with every step, your pelvis has to stay stable while your whole body weight moves over that one hip. And this is where the issue starts. Because if your pelvis cannot stay level and controlled over one leg, your hip starts taking force in a way it just doesn't tolerate well. So let's keep this simple. To hold your pelvis steady when you stand on one leg, your body needs good coordination from your lateral hip stabilizers, your deep hip rotators, your trunk and core muscles, and even your knee and foot. Not just strength, coordination, timing, and control. And when that system is not doing its job, your pelvis drops, shifts, twists, or your trunk leans to compensate. That changes how forces go through the hip joint. And instead of load being shared well, it gets compromised. And that is when you start getting joint compression, sharing stress, irritation in the front of the hip, or deep glute ache, or pain that builds the longer you walk. So you don't have a walking problem. You have a hip, knee, and foot stability problem that walking just exposes. I can often tell within a few steps why someone's hip hurts when they walk. So things I see is that one side of the pelvis is dropping or hiking up, or they are really leaning over when they step on one leg, or I see their stride is getting uneven. And of course, I often see limited trunk rotation as well. And the woman usually has no idea she's doing any of this. She just knows that by minute 15, her hip hurts. That's because one bad step is not the issue. It's 1,000 repeated steps done with poor pelvic control. So I had a client who said, I can clean the house and I can sit and I can do some workouts even, but walking is that ruins me. And when I watched her walk, her pelvis kind of dropped, the knee collapsed in. And every time she stood on the painful side, there was some sort of instability. Not huge, but enough. And that tiny drop repeated over and over was enough to keep irritating her hip. So walking was not damaging her. Walking was exposing the instability that was already there. If your pain starts always after a certain amount of walking and keeps getting worse the longer you go, that is a big clue. That's usually not about tight muscles just getting tired. That's usually repeated irritation from poor load and control. Here's the reason number 2. Your body starts compensating. Now, let's say your pelvis is unstable during walking. Your nervous system is not going to just let you collapse. It will try to save you. So your body starts compensating. So you may lean your trunk to the side or hike one hip further up, shorten your stride, or start rotating through your pelvis instead of controlling it. And this is the frustrating part. Although compensations often help you keep moving, but they create even more stress. So now you do not just have like pelvis instability, you have pelvic instability plus compensations layered on the top of it. Your body is trying to protect you from falling, and in the process, it may be creating even more irritation in the hip. I had one client whose pain always started around 10 minutes into her walk and got much worse by the minute 20. When I looked at her walking, her hip sort of gave out each time she stepped on it. So by the time she got further into her walking, the joint was so irritated and it was really hurting. So we did not just tell her to walk less, but what we did, we worked on targeted muscle strengthening and cleaned up the way she was loading that hip. So that hip instability decreased and her pelvis started staying more stable and her walking tolerance improved really fast. She did not look like she was way older than she really was anymore. The next time you walk, pay attention to this. Do you lean to one side? Does one hip feel like it hikes up? Does one foot turn out more or does the arch collapse? Does one step feel shorter to you? Those are just the little clues or what might be actually happening in your body when you walk. And if this is already sounding very familiar to you and you are starting to realize your hip pain might not be about tightness at all, go watch my free masterclass after this video. In that training, I break down the real reason chronic hip pain keeps coming back, the biggest mistakes women make when they try to fix it, and the exact 3-step method I use with my clients. I'll put the link right down below this video. And also make sure to subscribe because this channel is all about helping you understand what is actually going on in your body so you can stop guessing. Here's a reason number 3. Stretching and regular strengthening do not fix this. So this is where so many women get so stuck. They are told to stretch their hip flexors or do the glute strengthening and clamshells and bridges or, stretch or foam roll everything. And listen, those things are not automatically bad, but they do not necessarily fix pelvic instability during walking because you can have sort of strong muscles and still have terrible control when you stand on one leg. And that's the difference there. You can be strong on the floor and unstable on your feet. You can train muscles all day long in positions that never challenge the exact thing that hurts. I have worked with women who were doing all the glute work. They could do bridges, side leg lifts, clamshells, and all of it, and yet walking still hurts. So why is this? Because the problem was not whether they could squeeze their glutes. The problem was whether they could control their pelvis when their whole body weight moved over one leg. That is a completely different demand in your body. I had a client who was really strong. So she had been doing Pilates, all kinds of strength training, and all kinds of rehab style work. She had seen PT already. But walking still lit her hip up. And when we looked closer, she had very poor pelvic control during single leg loading. So she was doing all the right exercises, but not training the actual skill her body needed for walking. And that is why she stayed stuck all the time. So ask yourself, have you been doing hip exercises consistently, but walking still causes you pain? Or can you do the exercises without pain, but walking is the thing that brings the symptoms on? Or do you feel stronger in workouts, but your walking tolerance has not really improved? If that sounds like you, then you may be training the wrong thing here. So here's the reason number 4, what actually needs to change. If walking is a single leg stability task, then your rehab needs to train single leg stability, not just general strength, not just flexibility or pain reduction. You need to teach your body how to control pelvic position when you stand on one leg. So that means a better timing, a better control, and better coordination. And this is where things start changing, because once your pelvis stays more level and more controlled during walking, the hip joint is no longer getting so irritated with every single step. Stop just strengthening muscles. Start teaching your body how to stabilize during the exact movement that hurts. So what does this actually look like? It usually starts with learning how to stand on one leg without the opposite side of pelvis dropping. So learning how to shift weight without leaning or twisting your body or spinning your body over the hip. Learning how to step through your foot and control the hip instead of falling into it. And then gradually carrying that into walking. That's a very different approach than just do more glute strengthening. And number 5. Do this test before you go to your next walk. So before you do another random stretch or strength workout, you need to know if your pelvis instability is actually your issue. And this is something you can start looking at right away. So stand in front of the mirror or record yourself with your phone. You gotta see yourself. So wear something where you can actually see your pelvis and hips moving, and just stand on your painful leg. Lift the other foot off the floor, hold for about 20 to 30 seconds and watch these things. Does your pelvis drop on the lifted side or the opposite side? Does your trunk lean hard over the standing leg? Or does the standing hip hike up? Or do you lose balance or start kind of, swinging your arms? Then compare this to the other side. Now, next step is to step forward with the right leg. So keep your weight evenly distributed on both legs, and then slowly lower your body down, bending both knees. Do not let your knee touch the floor all the way. So see if you can hold this position without letting your knee collapse in your pelvis, twist, rotate, or hike, or you losing the balance. It's almost like a little mini lunge position. If you see your pelvic drop or spin or any asymmetry, that is a big sign your pelvis might not be controlling single leg stance when you walk. And if your pelvis cannot control single leg stance, walking is going to keep irritating your hip because that instability is showing up with every single step. Now, I also want to be clear here. Not all walking pain is from pelvis instability. Sometimes there's something else going on in the hip joint itself. Can be things like osteoarthritis, labral irritation or impingement, or other structural irritation. But even then, poor pelvic control and poor loading usually makes those things feel worse. So either way, looking at how you walk matters. So if your hip only starts hurting when you walk, that is a clue. It is often not because walking is bad for you. It's just because walking is exposing a stability problem your body has not solved yet. And when your pelvis cannot stay stable on one leg, your hip joint pays the price. That's why sitting feels fine, or sleeping or laying down feels okay. But walking builds into pain because walking keeps repeating the same unstable pattern. If this helped you understand your hip pain in a different way, make sure you subscribe to this channel, because I'm going to break this down in a simple way so you can stop guessing and start understanding what your body actually needs. And if you're ready to go deeper right now, watch my free masterclass. I'll walk you through the hidden reasons for chronic hip pain, why they keep showing up, what most women are missing, and the exact 3-step method I use to help active women to get out of this pain cycle. The link is below this video. If walking keeps triggering your hip pain, that masterclass is your next step.